Hey, hello and welcome. Today we're going to learn how to use SolidJS and SolidStart to build a modern blog. If you've not worked with SolidJS before, I have a crash course which you can check out right now. The link's in the description. This video is sponsored by PostHog, the all-in-one analytics platform designed to give product-led teams everything they need to understand user behavior. I use PostHog for my product analytics, retention tracking, feature control, session recording, and so much more. Plus, as an all-in-one platform, you can use it to replace multiple tools and simplify your tech stack. PostHog can also be self-hosted on your existing infrastructure, making it ideal if you don't want to share data with third parties. Visit the link in the description to create an account and get started right away. SolidStart is still in beta. That means that you might come across some bugs when working with it and missing documentation, which was one of my major challenges building this project. But I jumped on the SolidJS Discord server, and whenever I needed help, I asked and I got help. And that's also why we have this tutorial today, so you don't have to go through the same challenges I went through in building my SolidStart blog. So web applications often compromise many components, databases, servers, front ends, bundlers, data fetching, mutation, caching, and infrastructure. Enter SolidStart, a framework that provides many of these components out of the box and integrates them seamlessly. Client-side rendering, server-side rendering, streaming SSR, static site generation. And when building a blog, you don't want it to be client-side rendered because there's usually SEO issues that accompany client-side rendered applications. So you want it to be server-side rendered, an SSG application. You want it to be a multi-page app, which is what we have today. But SolidJS has this cool feature that I see in NextJs by Vercel, which is prefetching. So that means that our application is a multi-page app, it's server-side rendered, but you're not even going to know because once you click any link, it opens up immediately. And that's really cool. Besides that, SolidJS also has the file-based routing whereby you don't have to start setting up your own routing configurations. You just create a file in your application and you have a route for that one. So we're going to see how that is done. This application is currently deployed and you can check it out right now at solidstartblog.vercel.app. I'll teach you how to deploy a SolidStart application tool. There's a few configurations you have to make along the way for that. This is a similar blog I built with NextJs. Now, if I want to compare SolidStart and NextJS based on performance, you can see that this is basically the same blog, but over to page speed insight, SolidStart gets an easy 100 performance, 100 in accessibility, best practices, and SEO, a few things that we can easily update ourselves. And same blog, same content right here that you can see in the homepage, but over to our NextJS app, you see that we're getting 94 for performance and 97 for accessibility, which isn't bad either, but I didn't have to do anything extra to achieve 100 with SolidStart. To set up a SolidStart application, we'll go over to a terminal or a file manager and create a directory in your own parent directory of choice. So right here, I'm creating my SolidStart application in the projects directory I have on my desktop, and I'll say mkdir. You can also do this with your file manager or file explorer. This is just creating a directory named SolidStart blog right here. And I hit enter, we have a directory. Now the next thing I'm going to do is go over to the directory and cd SolidStart blog, and I want to initialize SolidStart. So we're going to run npm init and solid. This should help us generate a new SolidStart application. Need to install the following packages: create solid 2.5, you hit Y for yes. Welcome to SolidStart setup wizard. There are definitely bugs and some features might not work yet, but if you encounter an issue, you can go over to the GitHub issues page or the SolidJS Discord server and let your issue be known. You'll get help. Which templates do you want to use? Bear Hacker News to do MVC. So We want to create a blog and we want to use MDX. By the way, MDX is basically Markdown but with JSX. So you can see this blog right here is built using MDX. So we have a Markdown, and then inside of our Markdown we can also write JSX. We can also use our regular JSX tags, our HTML tags, H1, H2, div, and the rest, and we can have components in the Markdown file. So look at this. This is a button component, and we can make our articles really interactive using MDX. That's why we're going to be using MDX for our blog today. So you go over to whichever one you want with MDX in our case, and you hit enter. Server-side rendering, Y for yes. Do you want to use TypeScript? Yes, we want to use TypeScript for this blog. Good, that's done. Next step, run npm install and do npm run dev to open. So this is a SolidStart blog. I want to open this with VS Code, and I can do that by running code and dot. All right, and we have a SolidStart blog open in VS Code. Now SolidStart needs Node.js version 16 and above to run. So if you don't have Node.js version 16, you should update your Node.js. You can use nvm for that. And the next thing we want to do is install our npm script. I encountered some peer dependency issues when installing with pnpm and npm. So my recommended right now is yarn, which worked seamlessly for me. And to do that, I'm going to run yarn install. And we have our packages successfully installed. Next thing we're going to do is start up our application. And we can do that by running yarn dev or hitting this dev button on our npm script section of VS Code. So that started successfully. We can go ahead and open our page route. So this is it right now. This is what we have, and I'm just going to close all these other tabs so we can see what we're doing clearly. Hello world, and we have right here a counter. We also have a navigation bar for index and about. So this returns page not found and back to index. Visit solidjs.com to learn how to build solid apps, and click docs. We have a docs page, and this is done using MDX. And next we're going to walk through our SolidStart code base together. Okay, what's in the box? What's in a SolidStart blog project code base? Now we start with the node modules, and next is our public folder. So inside of our public folder is where we can store static assets. For example, if we come over to /favicon.ico, we should see a SolidStart favicon right there. That's a SolidJS icon. So we're going to be adding images for our blog post right inside of this public folder. The next thing we have is our src directory. We have the gitignore package.json, readme.md, tsconfig.json. Let's see what's in the package.json before moving over to the src directory. Inside of our package.json, you can see the scripts right now, dev, build, start, and then under dev dependencies on line 10, we have mdx.js/rollup, which we're using for our MDX files. We have SolidStart node, TypeScript, and vite. Vite is the default build tool for SolidStart applications. For dependencies, we have SolidJS, SolidMDX, SolidStart, and UNDICI. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's an HTTP client for Node.js. And this is what we have right now. Next thing is our src folder, and inside of our src folder we have the components directory where we're storing our components. You can see the counter.tsx file and the counter.css file. So this counter is what you can see in our home page where we have click, 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 and the counter.css file is imported in the counter.tsx file. And for routes, we have the docs.mdx and the index.mdx. This is how routing works in SolidStart. If you worked with NextJs before, it's going to look really familiar. So you just create your file name. In this case, we have docs.mdx, and when we go over to /docs, you see whatever is the content of the docs.mdx file. So some description here, and I'm just going to add these exclamation marks and save, and you can see that reflect right here. mdx doc, you can see that reflect right here. So I like that once you save, you see it reflects immediately, which is not something I get out of the box with Next.js. There's also the 404.mdx page, and this is a catch-all route. This is how catch-all routes are created in SolidStart. And that means that when we go over to a page that does not exist right here, look at that, page not found. So I know that's like an irony, but this should be non-existent page instead of just existed page not found. So it's a catch all route. And we can also create folders. So we can create the blog folder right here. And if we go over to /blog right now, we should still see a catch all routes page not found information. But if we want to see something when we go over to /blog, what we're going to do is create an index.mdx file. And I'm just going to write hey. So you can see this is markdown, your basic markdown. And let's use just one heading for this. And look at that, we have hey right there. It's that easy to create a page and just start writing your article immediately. Another thing we can do right here is also create TSX files. So with the default config that we have with our MDX and SolidStart, we can easily just start creating MDX files to represent routes. But we can also create a TSX file. For example, we have right here index.tsx. Now what's going to happen if we go back to /blog is that the index.tsx file will override the index.mdx file. So let's say I have SFC right here. So this is an extension in VS Code which I use to easily create SolidStart files. So this is it right here. And when I reload /blog, you can see that we have index. Now this is one of the blogs that you might encounter when working with SolidStart. This is supposed to work seamlessly, but for some reason I'm not sure why we have that error message. Let me restart this and try to reload that page, and look at that. So this works right now. So I guess once you change your index from index.mdx and add an index.tsx, and it's supposed to write what was there before, we get that error. I don't know, but that's likely the case. So this is it. You can also do the same thing for the routes folder. Right now we have index.mdx, but you see us do that when working on our blog right now, because we'll need to use an index.tsx file for our index page. Now this index.tsx file is going to override the default index.mdx file. So this should be SFC for a solid function component. I'm just going to say home page, and over to the home page right here, which is index, and we have that home page. So that's it for what's in the routes folder. This is how we can create routes. We can create catch-all routes for individual folders too. So we have our catch-all route, the default for not found page. We can also do the same thing for our blog page. We can have its own separate catch-all route. So let's name this 404. And creating catch-all routes, we start with the left opening square brackets. We have ... and then the name of our catch-all route. This could be named anything.mdx. And whenever we visit a page that doesn't exist in that route, we get that error message. So this is the catch-all route for blog. And let me say, instead of page not found, we have blog post not found right here. And then what we want to do right now, look at this. We can just go over to /hey, and we have the catch-all routes for the blog itself, not the blog folder for our application, which is this first 404.mdx. But if we go over to /blog /hey, look at that. We have blog post not found. So that's how we can create catch-all routes for individual routes. Now that's it for our routes page. We also want to look at the vite.config.ts file, which is where we're setting up our SolidStart application to use MDX. And when deploying to Vercel, we'll also come back to this file because we need to do an extra configuration for that. But you can see here, we're importing solid from SolidStart/vid, importing define config from vid, and right here provider import source, we're using solid MDX. We're also importing mdx.js/rollup, and this is where we're doing our MDX setup, MDX and .md setup in our SolidStart blog. What we're going to do next is see how to add our individual blog posts inside of this blog page. All right, we're going to name our first blog post Astro Build Tutorial.mdx. So if we go over to /blog/Astro Build Tutorial, we should see our blog post right there, Hey Astro. But we're not done yet. You know, we need SEO for our blog, so we gotta have like our head tags, our meta tags for title, description, and all that. Without all of these tags, our blog post will not be able to function well when it comes to search engines, Google, Bing, Brave, and all the rest. So we need to add these different tags. And luckily for us, SolidStart has a provision for all of that. Remember that in our MDX files, we can use the import statements. We can write JSX inside of a markdown. So let's import head. We can get syntax highlighting for a markdown file. Right now, if you come over to the VS Code bottom navigation, you see that this is on plain text. So let's search for markdown, and there should be an MDX extension to make working with MDX easier. But I've not installed that in my VS Code. You can search for it in the marketplace. Now this is Hey Astro, and we want to add a different head tag. So we want to add the head tag right now, which we've imported, and close it. And then inside of our head tag, we're going to use title, we're going to use the meta tag, we're going to use the link or the script tags if we want. The challenge with doing this is that we'll need to do it in all of our blog posts. So we need to do it for Astro Build tutorial, and when next we want to create a blog post, for example, we need a frame of motion tutorial, we need to come over to our tutorial, MDX file, imports head, title, meta, link, body, script from SolidStart. We start creating the head tag again, start creating the meta tag, and all that and all that and all that. Now there's a way to handle this, which is by using dynamic routes in SolidStart, but we won't be covering that in this tutorial. It's similar to what we have in NextJS. I've done a NextJS tutorial where I taught you how to use dynamic routes and how to just create MDX files and then import them and use that in the dynamic route. But we don't need that for our blog post today, because I've decided to work with the simpler option of just creating a blog post.mdx file and having our MDX page right there, so that once we edit it, we see our updates immediately. What we're going to do instead is create a component named article head, and then we'll import this component inside of whichever blog post we want to create, and just pass in props like head, title, meta, or description, and all of that. Now we'll do this inside of the components directory. Let's create a new file named articlehead.csx. Inside of our article head file, we'll start by importing head, title, meta, and all of that from SolidStart. We're not going to be using all of these tags today, but I just want you to see the options that are available to you. So on line 2, we have const article head, and this is going to be an arrow function. For props, we're expecting title. We also need the description, and that'll be all for our blog post today, but feel free to add every other thing you need for SEO in your blog. And we want to return JSX right here. So on line 5, we have a title tag, and inside our title tag, we have the title of our blog post. We're going to supply this via props, and we're going to add the solid blog text to all of them. So this can be anything. This can be the name of your blog, maybe Ebenezer's blog, or Jake's blog, or Jane's blog. So for us, the name is solid blog right here. And we also need the meta tag. So name right here, we have description, and this is also going to help with the SEO scores in the Google page speed insights. So we have content as description, and we're going to close that. We also have the meta property, and one thing you should not forget to do is wrap this in the head tag, which we've imported right on line 1. So let's just drag this inside of the head tag. And we have a meta property for OG description. Now this is the description you see when you share your blog post on social media, on Facebook for example. What's going to show there when you share that link will be coming from OG description. So we want to provide that for our blog post, and content is going to be same as description. We also need the meta property for title. Remember, we've imported meta from SolidStart. Let's use that instead of the one with small letter. So we have meta right here, and then for title, so this is property and this is OG title. And for content right here, we have title. So let's use a template literal for this, and we have title and solid blog. Let's also close this tag. And this is it for our head tag, for our article head. You can go ahead and add any other meta tag you need for your blog. You can add your script tag, you can add a link tag, and all of that to your article head, so that all you need to do is import it in your individual blog files. If you want to learn the concept of using dynamic routes instead of creating your blog posts as MDX pages, check out my NextJS tutorial. Now back to our Astro blog tutorial. We're going to remove line 1 as we don't need it anymore, but we'll also need to export our article head from component/index.tsx file to make it easy to import in our MDX pages. In our index.tsx file for components, let's export default as article head from article head. And over to our article head.tsx file, we're going to export this as default. Now back to our Astro build tutorial.mdx. Let's import article head from //components. It would be really cool if we can get IntelliSense for our MDX files. I think that's possible with an extension. And we don't need line 3 to 5 anymore. The next thing we're going to do is create variables for title, date, description, and thumbnail URL. If we were using dynamic routes, we'll need front matter instead in our MDX file. I've explained this in my NextJS tutorial, but right now we're not using dynamic routes for our blog posts. So to create a variable, and it's also important to learn how to create variables in MDX files, you need the export keyword. And I just remember that I had a different experience building this before in terms of syntax highlighting. So I think there has to be an MDX extension I installed in my other VS Code. Let's search for MDX and look at that. We have an MDX extension right here. And we also need to install MDX preview. It probably does something we need. MDX inline. So I'm just going to install these 3. I think the most important is this one right here. MDX inline is probably about writing inline MDX in JSX. But what we need right now is MDX extension. So let's see if there's going to be any difference. Look at this. We have Markdown right now. And look at that. We now have the option of selecting Markdown React. Okay, that's much better. So we have syntax highlighting for our MDX files. So do that if you've not. And then we're going to create a title variable. And this is build a blog with Astro. We also need our date variable. So we'll have to add this for each of our blog posts. You define the title, the date of publish. So we have January 6, 2023, and you probably want to make that today's date, depending on when you're creating this blog post or writing this article. We have the description also. We have const description. Now, the reason we are defining this as variables is so that we'll be able to import them in our blog's homepage. So in the homepage of our application, we need to add links to the different articles we have, the different blog posts we have. So for each of the blog posts, we need to know the title, we need to know the date, we need to know the description, and then we can display that in our blog homepage so that people can easily click to get the article. So this is why we're having these as variables. So export const description, and we're killing 2 birds with 1 stone, because we'll be able to easily use the title, date, description in our article head component. So this is learn Astro by building a blog. So right there, the last thing we need is the thumbnail URL. So this is thumbnail URL, and we'll add this later on in our application. So we're going to name the thumbnail for this particular blog post Astro blog thumbnail.jpeg. All right, so this is it, and the next thing we want to do is add our article head component, and we have title right here. And title. I'm guessing if we added if we define the profs as type, we'll be getting IntelliSense for it also. I'm not sure about that because I've not done it, but that's likely to be the case. We have description as description, and we have thumbnail URL as thumbnail URL. All right, so this is it. I hope I wrote that correctly. Yeah. So this is it for our article head. And next thing we want, where we have Hey Astro on line 9, let's just add the title. So this is how to use variables in your MDX file. So we have the title variable right here on line 9. We have hash and then title. So that's it. Let's save this and go over to our blog page and reload we have an error right here, an error code while rendering blog/astro blog tutorial expected a closing tag for article head. So back to line 7, this is what we want to do. And then let's reload again. Thumbnail URL is not defined. I guess I spelled that wrongly. So this is supposed to be capital U, and we have capital U for URL. And let's reload again. Look at that, we have a blog post right here, build a blog with Astro. For the rest of our content, I'm just going to paste that, and this is a markdown subheading. And on line 11 we have a div tag. This is a blog post about, so I'm just trying to show you how we can use the JSX inside of our MDX file. We have the BR tag, we also have like subheadings, so it's basically markdown and JSX. I'm also trying to use a button here, but we've not created this yet, so we should get an error if we go back to our page. Let's quickly create that. Let's create this button component and import it inside of our .mdx file. So over to our components directory, we have a new file, and then we have button.tsx, and I use sfc to quickly generate this button. So we have const button. I like to make this arrow function just to stay consistent across my project. With this, if you've not worked with SolidJS before, which is recommended that you have SolidJS knowledge. I have a SolidJS crash course which you should check out before coming over here. But with our button components, we're going to be using state management in SolidJS. So on line 1, let's import create signal from SolidJS, and right here on line 4 we have a button text, and then we have set button text is equal to create signal and either text from prop right here, so we can decide to provide text for this button, or we have click me. And what we want to return is a button tag, and inside of it let's have a button text. And remember, for state in SolidJS we need to call it to get the value. For our button, we'll add an on click event listener, and what we're going to return is set button text, and we have button text, we'll call it again, plus let's have the fire emoji right there. So this is just to show you how we can use a button, a component we created ourselves, inside of our .mdx files. Next thing we're going to do is come over to the component/index.tsx file, and let's export button. So export default as button from ./button right there, and we can now come over to our Astro build tutorial.mdx, and on line 1 we're going to import button as well. Back to our blog post page, let's reload, and look at that, build a blog with Astro. This is a blog post about Astro build. We'll learn to build a blog with Astro. So this is it, and look at our button functioning seamlessly. And that's how to use .mdx file in SolidStart, and how to use components in our MDX file. And you can also notice our article heads working correctly. So look at the title, build a blog with Astro, and then if we inspect right now and come over to our head tag, so look at the head tag right here, you can see that SolidStart has given us the title right here. So I'm going to zoom in for clarity, and look at this. So SolidStart has given us a title right here, and then we have a meta tag, name as description, property, property for OG title. So that's it. That's how to use the head tag, the meta tags inside of our SolidStart blog. We're not done yet, because if we convert to the index file, there's no way to know that we have this blog post. There's no way to access it, and that's another challenging thing I came across when working with SolidStart, which I'm going to teach you how to. Another reason we exported our title, date, description, and thumbnail variables. For our other blog posts, I'm going to copy the files I've created already and paste them in the blog folder. So let's paste. And remember, I said we can also use .tsx for our pages. So when you have .tsx with a particular page name, and then you have .mdx with that same page name, the tsx overrides the .mdx file. So SolidStart is going to use the tsx file for that route instead. So right here, I'm just going to say 404 for blog, sfc, a quick one, and then let's name this not found blog. and not found blog. I'm also tempted to change this to an arrow function again, just for consistency. And if we say Astro tutorials, we have our 404 page. So let's just say blog 404 right here. All right, for our blog post, you can see I've added the Freema Motion tutorial.mdx, GraphQL, good, bad, ugly.mdx, index.mdx. In the Freema Motion tutorial, notice on line 11, we have an img tag with src as thumbnail URL and alt as title. So if we navigate to this particular blog post, we should expect to see the image tag right there. So this is so that you know how to work with images in our blog post, and we're going to add these images now. Don't worry, I'm going to share a link to all these files, to all the blog files, and then a link to all the images we'll be using in this blog, so you can easily add it to your own project. For the images, I'll come over to the public directory and paste. Right now we have the thumbnail for Astro, Freema, GraphQL, Python, and Redux articles. Back to our application, let's reload, and look at that Freema Motion, the React Motion library. Look at that image right here, and this is a markdown subheading. So I've done this on purpose so that I'll also show you how to style images inside of our SolidStart blog post, and I'll show you that through folder or route layouts. And to create layout for a particular folder, like the blog folder we have in our src/routes directory, we need to create a file with the same name as the folder in the parent directory. So right now we have the parent directory as routes. We want to create a layout because we want to apply the same styling or the same layouting system to the different files inside of this blog post. And SolidStart makes that easy. So inside of the routes directory, we're going to create a blog.tsx file. And whatever we do inside of this blog.tsx file is going to affect all the other files inside of the blog folder. So what that means is that on line 1, we can import outlet from SolidStart, and outlet is going to represent the content of these other pages inside of our blog folder. So you're going to see this in action right now. That's going to make it easier to understand. So let's create our blog post component right here. We're going to name it blog post, and this is going to represent the individual blog post. And right here, we're going to return on line 4 our JSX. So we have div and we have outlets right here. So this outlet represents the content of the different files in Astro Build, Freema Motion, GraphQL, and all the rest. We'll need to style this later on, but for now, I want to show you how we can make a change that affects every of this blog posts. So H1 right here, and I have, hey, I'm the layouts guy or gal. Next, we'll export blog posts as default. Also, to avoid this extra export default line, we can declare this with the function keyword. So on line 3, we export directly. So we export default, and then we have function and blog post. And with this, we can avoid the extra export default line. So look at that now. Hey, I'm the layout guy / gal. And inside of our blog, we can have, so right now this is for Freema Motion, and if we come over to the Astro blog tutorial.mdx file, so we have Astro blog tutorial, and we don't need this .mdx extension. Look at that. So whatever we do inside of this blog.tsx file, which is the layout file for the blog directory, it's going to affect every other page inside of the blog directory. So you can do this for any other directory you want. You can create a directory for docs, you can create a directory for people, for anything basically, and then you create a file with the same name inside of the parent folder, which is routes, not inside of the blog folder in our case, but inside of the routes folder, so that the blog folder and the blog.tsx file are siblings. So this is how we can create layouts, and I did that to show you how we can style our individual pages, or in our case, style images in general in each of our blog posts. We can also use SCSS in SolidStart, and all we need to do is come over to our terminal and install SAS as a dev dependency. So right in our terminal, we have yarn add -D and SAS SASS. Once this is installed, we can easily use .scss files instead of .css file. So SCSS just makes writing CSS easier in so many cases. Now for our blog post, we can easily come over to the routes directory and create a file named blogpost.module. So this is using CSS modules. I've taught you that in the SolidJS tutorial. And we have .blogpost right here. And then let's just style ing tag inside of .blogpost. We'll give it a width of 40 em. And over to the blog.tsx file, we have class right here. So SolidStart also uses class just like SolidJS instead of class name that you see with React. And for the class, we'll import styles from /blogpost.module.scss. And right on line 6, we have styles.blogpost. Now look at that, see that the style has applied to our Framer Motion image. And we also don't need line 1 anymore. I just wanted to show you an example of that. And that's it for layouts in our SolidStart blog. Before we go over to the next challenging phase of building our blog, which is in showing our users or blog visitors a list of all our blog posts, let's work on the navbar. Alright, to work on the navbar, we need to go over to the root.tsx file. The entry client.tsx file is what loads and hydrates the JavaScript for our application on the browser, while the entry server.tsx file handles requests on the server. And in most cases, you will need to work on these two files. What we need right now is the root.tsx file, which is the HTML root of our application for both client and server rendering. So right here, you can see suspense being imported, the link tag, body, L boundary, file routes. I'll show you how to use this A tag in SolidStart, which is the equivalent of the NextJs link tag. Right on line 32 is where we have the file routes component, which represents the individual routes of our application. So we can do whatever we want to do here, and it's going to affect all of our application. This is like the general layout for everything we have in our app. That's why on line 27 and line 28, we have the index for navbar and about for navbar. And then whichever page we come to, we're going to see index and about. We can go ahead and create a navbar component so that we can import it on line 27 instead of what we currently have on line 27 and line 28. You can see the A tag being used here instead of this small A tag that you're used to in your regular HTML or React. This A tag is what helps SolidStart treat your links like your application is an SPA, single page app. So whether it's in the already hosted app or on localhost, once you click, you see what you need right here. So this is the hosted app right now, and then back to localhost, we click and we see it immediately. So that's one of the things that the A tag helps us achieve. And then we declare link by using href, and right here we have slash for the home, right here currently index, and then slash about for about. So let's copy this because we want to create our own nav component, and we'll do that inside of the components directory. We have nav.tsx, and again we have sfc, and then on line 3 let's just paste our copied A tag. So we're going to wrap this in a nav tag, and we'll move line 5 and 6 up, and the next thing we want to do is import A tag. So we can easily do that in VS Code by writing A and then hitting import from SolidStart. Right there we have a navbar. We also need to style a navbar. So right inside of our components directory, let's create a nav.module.scss file, and I'm going to paste the styling for a navbar. You can pause this video and then write this yourself. So right inside of the nav.tsx file, we'll import styles from nav.module.scss, and on line 6 we're going to give our navbar a class of styles.nav. Next, back to the root.tsx file. Instead of what we have on line 16 and 17, let's bring in a nav component. So that's auto imported using VS Code, and this is it on line 4. Back to our application, look at that, our home and about nav, much better. Next, let's learn how to fetch the information for all of our blog posts and put that in the home page. So for our application, we're getting the information from our projects right here inside of the blog folder, but this is also a way you can fetch data externally. So we'll learn that right now. All right, let's learn how to fetch data in our application and use that in our homepage component. Now for our homepage, we want to get all the different MGX files inside of the blog folder, and for those files, we'll also be getting their title, date, description, and thumbnail URL variables. Over to the index.tsx file. So to access our homepage, we have the route/index.tsx file. Remember that the index.tsx file is overriding the index.mgx file, so we don't need that anymore. Let's delete it. For our index.tsx file on line 1, I'm going to quickly name this home to make it easier to understand, and this is equal to an arrow function, and we're exporting default as home. On line 4, let's use h1 and we'll name this my SolidStart blog. You can name this whatever you want. You can use your name. That'll be cool too. Next, let's get our blog post data. And in SolidStart, we'll be using create route data for this. So there's the create route data method that can be imported from SolidStart. And outside of our component, we can use this create route data to fetch data for that particular route. So that's why the name is create route data, so that you can create data for whatever route you're working on. And we'll also need to export whatever function we use this create route data in. So in this case, we're naming our function route data, and we're exporting it also. In that way, we can access the data from here inside of our home components. Now on line 13, we're going to return create route data. And as its argument, we have an asynchronous function. We're using async because we need to access the contents of our blog folder. And inside of this create route data function, you can also use the JavaScript fetch method, for example, to fetch data from an external API. This function is going to run during build time, and then our home component is going to have access to whatever data we are returning here. On line 5, we want to get our files, and we'll do that by importing the content of the blog folder. And with vite, we have access to that via the import.meta.glob property. So import.meta.glob and then /blog/star.mdx. So this is going to give us all of the MDX files inside of the blog directory. Now on line 7, we can log files to the console just so that it's clear what we're doing. When we log to the console inside of this route data, we need to come over to a terminal instead of the console on a browser. Remember that this function runs during compile time. So inside of our terminal, you can see what we have right now. It's an object with key value pairs. So we have the first article /blog/astrobuild tutorial.mdx, and then we have the value right there. Same thing for framer motion, GraphQL, index.mdx, redux2key tutorial.mdx. And for our blog, we don't need index.mdx, so let's delete that. And right now, all the MDX files we have are the articles that we need. So on line 7, we can now access posts. So let's create a variable named post, and then this is going to be object.keys. Remember, we want to get our files and .map right here. We also have an asynchronous function, and then for each of the file, this is what we're returning. So we have const slug. We're getting the slug right now, and for the slug, remember that this is the content right here, ./blog/astrobuild tutorial.mdx. So we want to remove ./blog and we want to remove .mdx extension. This log is going to be astrobuild tutorial. That means that if we go over to localhost 3000/blog/astrobuild tutorial, which is this log, we get the content of the astrobuild tutorial file. So on line 8, we have file.replace ./blog/ and then we're going to remove .mdx as well. So .mdx, and that's what we have. On line 9, we have const meta is equal to await files, and then for each of the file, we're going to call the function to get the file content, which is what we have right here. So we call the function to get the file content, and this is provided to us by Vite, the bundler we're using for our SolidStart application. Now that we have our slug and we have the meta variable, let's define a type for meta so that you can see the contents. And meta is going to contain the variables we have inside of each of our blog posts. So that means that inside of the astrobuild tutorial.mdx file, we're going to have title, date, description, thumbnail URL in meta. So for our type, this is what we have for meta. Line 4, we have title, we have dates, a string, and we have description, and we have thumbnail URL. So I'm going to make sure to write that correctly this time. Yeah. And then we want to return slug, we want to return meta, and make that available to our home component. So let's return slug, and then let's return all of the content for meta. So we'll await this right now, await meta, and for the type we have as meta. That's going to clear our TypeScript error. Now that we have our post, let's finally return it. On line 21, return, and since this is a promise, we're going to use promise.all and post. Now we'll have access to our post and the meta contents, which includes the title, date, description, thumbnail URL inside of the home component. To access posts in our home component, we'll need another method from SolidStart, which is named useRouteData. So useRouteData right here, and we're going to add the type also, type of route data, to make IntelliSense easy, and then we'll call that function. So without TypeScript, we can easily just call useRouteData to get whatever we have inside of route data. On line 28, we can log post to see what we have. So this is console.log, and then we have post. And remember, this is SolidJS, so we need to call this variable to get the data inside of it. Now over to our browser, look at that. We have our different posts right in the console. So astrobuild tutorial, we open that and look at the meta content. We have date, description, and the slug we returned. We have thumbnail URL, we have title. We can now use this information to display a different blog posts in the home page. Back to our code base, we can remove the console.log statement, and inside of our JSX, we'll add a section for our article list. So this is going to be with the section tag from your regular HTML or regular JSX, and we'll use the SolidJS 4 syntax for this. I've taught this in my SolidJS crash course, so you should check it out if you've not done that until now. We have the SolidJS 4 syntax. This is imported on line 1, and for each of posts right here, so remember we have to call this. It can be a common mistake with people just using SolidJS when moving from frameworks like React, Vue, or Svelte. And the alternative to this in React is using the .map method to loop through an array and return data. Inside of our 4 components, we're going to have posts to represent each of the posts. And we'll return JSX again. We'll use the A tag from SolidStart. So that's A from SolidStart. And on line 35, we're going to add the href prop or attribute. And we'll use the template literals for this, so we can have /blog/post.slug. And inside of our A component, we have div and the thumbnail right here. This is img src, and that's going to be post.thumbnail URL. And we have alt as thumbnail and loading as lazy. We're also going to add another div for the title and description. So this is h2 right here. We have post.title, and we have a p tag for post.description, and then we have post.date. So title, description, date. And on line 37, we have the thumbnail. So let's save this and back to our home page to see what we have. So look at that. This is our home page. We have the different article links. So we're going to add the styling right now, but notice that we can click on each of them to get to the individual blog post page. So let's add the styling for our home page. And for that, I'm going to paste a home.module.css file inside of the src folder. I'll also leave a link to this CSS file in the description of this video, so you can check it out and just paste it in yours. And I'm also going to scroll slowly through this so that you can pause and then copy this into your own code. And you're also free to style this any way you want instead of using my own CSS file. That's also welcome. Back to our index.tsx file, we're going to import styles from ./home.module.css. And for line 33, the section tag, we have class as styles.article list. We're going to need this for the A tag, and this is going to be styles.item. Line 37, we have styles.thumbnail. Line 42, we have styles.title. Line 43, we have styles.description. And line 44, we have styles.date. All right, let's save this and back to our home page. What do we have? Looks like there's an error right here. Failed to load module for home.module.css. So we probably pasted that in the wrong directory. And let's see. So this is inside of the src directory, and right now we're importing from the routes directory, so we can have /home.module.css, or we can move the home.module.css file inside of the routes directory. Alternatively, we can also create a styles folder and then have a route styles inside of it. So right now we've moved the home.module.css file inside of the routes directory. Back to our page. Look at what we have. We have a SolidStart blog. We have a navbar right here, home and about, my SolidStart blog, Astro be the blog with Astro, Framer Motion, GraphQL, the good, the bad, and the ugly, Redux for state management, a simple introduction to Python variables. And this is it for creating a blog with SolidStart. We've come a long way, and you've done a really good job if you followed up till this point. The next thing we're going to do is deploy a SolidStart application. I want to walk you through deploying a SolidStart application because there's an extra step of configuration needed to make this work on Vercel or Netlify or any other hosting provider you might want to use. And if you've learned from this tutorial so far and you're watching on YouTube, please do me a favor and hit the like button, the subscribe button, and support this channel by hitting the super thanks button so that I can keep the videos coming. You can also join this channel to get access to exclusive perks, including early access videos, and it's another way to support me so that I can keep on creating these videos for you. Now let's learn how to deploy a SolidStart application on Vercel. To deploy our SolidStart application on Vercel or on any other cloud provider, we'll need to revisit the vite.config.ts file. SolidStart provides us with adapters that we can use to set our project environments, and currently SolidStart supports Node, static hosting, Netlify functions and Edge, Vercel functions and Edge, Cloudflare workers and pages, and Deno deploy. For our application, we'll need to install SolidStart Vercel. And if we wanted to deploy on Netlify, that'll be SolidStart Netlify. So let's run yarn add, and then we have SolidStart Vercel. This is going to help us with deploying to Vercel. Now inside our vite.config.ts file, let's import Vercel from SolidStart Vercel. Next, on line 15, where we have solid, let's add another property inside of the object named adapter, and then we'll call Vercel. And that is all the configuration we need for a Vercel deployment. If this was Netlify, it's the same procedure. To deploy our app, we're going to use GitHub and Vercel. So let's initialize repository, write in VS Code. And the next thing we're going to do, let's just create one commit for this and set up SolidStart blog, and then publish branch. And we have published to GitHub private repository. I already have a repository named SolidStart blog, so I'm just going to add 2 to this one, and I should make this private for now, but I'm going to make the initial one public so that you can easily access the repository. Now we can choose to open this on GitHub, and look at that, we have a SolidStart blog, and over to vercel.com you can see the SolidStart blog we already have, which I showed you at the beginning of this tutorial. So let's add a new project and continue with GitHub. We have SolidStart blog 2 right here. Let's import, and to configure our project, we have SolidStart blog framework preset as SolidStart, and you hit the deploy button. And we have an error right now during deployment that says could not resolve ./nav.module.scss. And this is because if we come over to a nav component right here inside of the components directory, you can see that the nav.module.scss file starts with small letter, and right on line 2 we have the capital letter NAV. So let's make this a small letter NAV, and we're also going to add this .history file to git ignore. This is the VS Code local history settings, and we're going to make the commit, rename nav style import and commits, and then sync changes again. So once we have our changes pushed, we can come back to Vercel and we deploy. And look at that, our application is successfully deployed, and we should be able to visit it by going over to our dashboard and hit visit. So we should have our application right here. This is our SolidStart blog, video blog with the different blogs we have, video blog with Astro. By the way, I have an Astro tutorial which you can go check out on my YouTube channel. What's Astro? Well, you find out if you go over to my YouTube channel and watch the Astro video. I also have a Freema Motion video, a GraphQL video, a Redux Toolkit video. Well, I don't have a Python variables video, but that's it. This has been really interesting, and please give my channel all the support you can. Subscribe, join as a member, use the super thanks button, comment on this video, like and share. That'll be very much appreciated. Remember to check out the SolidJS crash course if you've not, and if you want to learn NextJS, I have a NextJS crash course and a React crash course also. And once you're done building your project, please share it on newdev.io. This is my learning platform and community for developers, so you can share it right here. The same way others are sharing their projects. You can see some examples if you click on this challenges page. You talk about your experience building this project and you add the link to your GitHub repo. That would be really cool. I would love to see it. I would love to check it out. This has been really interesting. See you in my next video.